In this second video of our parachute series, we're going to look at how to tie in and wrap the parachute hackle. And for demo purposes today, I'm going to use a grizzly cape hackle. In addition to stripping off the lower fuzzy fibers, I've also stripped off a little bit more feather from the lower side of this. And as we wrap our hackle feather, that will help it lay down just a bit better. So our next step is to trim this bare stem to length. So to do that, I lay the feather against the parachute post and parallel to the post, and we want the upper end of our bare stem to reach just above the upper thread. Now, this bottom stem section is actually going to tie in right behind the eye. So this part of the stem that reaches below the hook shank, we want it to be about the same length as that distance between the eye and the parachute post. So I've trimmed my bare stem to length, and you can see that it should reach just above the thread and then about to the back of the hook eye. Now, a cape hackle has a concave side and a convex side to it. And the concave side is the dull side of the feather, and the convex side is the shiny side of the feather. So when we wrap this feather around our post, we want that dull and concave side to be up. So when I tie it in, I lay that concave side against the hook, and I place that bare stem to where it's just behind the hook eye and start making a few loose wraps, and then gradually tighten up on those wraps and wrap back to the base of my parachute post. And at this point, I raise my feather up parallel and alongside the post, and I'm going to use the same method to wrap this feather in as I did to wrap the post in the earlier video. So I'm going to hold tension on the post and begin wrapping around both the post and the feather. And you can see I'm using the same method as before. I am passing off the thread to that right middle finger and wrapping up the post to about the top of my previous thread wraps on the post. And then I start wrapping back down again. And these wraps don't have to be touching, and we can wrap all the way back down to the base of our post and then leave our thread hanging at the base of the post. Now I could wrap my hackle here around the post and that would work okay, but I really like to let gravity help me out. So I'm going to move my hook into a vertical position. And then I'm going to take my thread and hang it somewhere on my vise out of the way so it won't be in the way of wrapping the hackle. So our first step here is to pull down gently and tug on the hackle feather and maybe push on it and put a little crease in that stem. And this will help that feather wrap and lay flat against the post as we make that first wrap. And my next step is to secure the tip of the hackle in my hackle pliers. Now I'm going to use a similar method for wrapping the hackle as we did for the post in the earlier video. Except instead of grabbing with my thumb and index finger, grabbing the post, I'm going to grab the post with my thumb and my middle finger. And then I begin wrapping. And I can use then my index finger to hold the tension on the wrap as I wrap the hackle around the post. So each time I wrap the hackle around the post, I'll secure the hackle with that index finger on the opposite side of the post, maintaining that wrapped tension, and wrap all the way down the post. Now, if you're wrapping a double hackle like for our parachute Adams, usually 3 to 4 wraps is sufficient, but here I'm wrapping 7 or 8 wraps. And once I reach that last wrap, I hold the hackle out and down away from the post. Now to tie off my hackle, I take my thread and wrap it over the tag end of the hackle, over the body of the fly, and around the post, all the while trying to avoid tying down any of my wrapped hackle fibers, and staying below them with the thread usually helps in that. But if you tie down a couple of them, that's okay. 2 to 3 wraps of thread is usually sufficient. And I take my scissors and, approaching the hackle from below, reach in and snip off that excess hackle, hopefully not snipping your thread in the process. Our final step before finishing the fly is to trim the parachute post and we trim it to about a hook gap in length. And it's always better to trim it a bit too long than a bit too short. And that completes wrapping and tying off our hackle. And how you finish the fly at this point is dependent on the particular pattern that you're tying.